The problem with the idol is that idols were image bearers of God. And this was the thought process. Whatever you did to an idol, you were doing to the god of the idol, the little g God. So if you offered it to an idol, you weren't offering it to that statue, you were offering it to the god. If you did it to the idol, you did it to God. Jesus borrows that. If you do it unto the least of these, you do it to me. What he's borrowing is, these are my dad's creations. They're reflections of my dad. If you want to know what my dad looks like, open your eyes and look around. And when you do it to them, you do it to me. And when you do it to me, you do it to Dad. You want Dad's attention? Pay attention to his kids. And I found this to be vital in communication. Like, we may not have much in common, you and I. We may have come from different parts of the country. I may not understand anything about your dreams, your hopes, your desires, your politics, your passions, or your past. We'll talk about the weather. That'll last 30 seconds. We'll be on fairly common ground. Doesn't take a real genius. I mean, you can feel if it's hot too. But if you want somebody, talk about their kids. And there it is. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. As long as you'll listen, ask questions, show some concern. You got them. Business people learned this a long time ago. They walk in, take a look around, find your kids on the desk on that photo, ask them about football, ask them about school. You know the game, you know the drill. I'm not talking about using, I'm talking about us having a common understanding that it matters. So when Jesus says, if you do it to them, you did it to me. If you do it to me, you do it to God. It's because they're images of my Father. Never forget it. Don't overlook them. You want to know what Dad looks like? Take a look in their eyes. That's his creation. Martin Luther said this: you have Christ in your neighbor. You ought to serve him for what you do to your neighbor. Indeed, you do to the Lord Christ himself. You have Christ in your neighbor. You ought to serve him because what you do to your neighbor, you do to Christ. Martin Luther didn't say that. Jesus did. Luther just changed the language. The fatal flaw might have been that we can't come in here on a Friday night and actually see Jesus. But I think for us to think that is our fatal flaw. Jesus plugs that fatal flaw by saying, everyone that crosses in front of you is a chance to see God. You can see God in their pain. You can see God in their hopelessness. You can see God in their dreams. You can see God in their frown. You can watch for God. Don't say you want an encounter with God and ignore his creation. For too long, the church, and we're all guilty of it because we're all part of the church. For too long, the church has asked God for revival, asked God for his presence, asked God to show up. And then when God does with people whose hair looks weird, their skin's not right, they don't live in the right part of town, they don't treat our property just properly, we don't want much to do with them. And God goes, I thought you wanted to see me. I sent you a couple chances to take a look at me. Oh, but God, you wouldn't look like that. And he goes, if you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. It's a fatal flaw. It's a fatal flaw for us to overlook that God's dropped a piece of himself into all of his creation and said, that is for whom I died. Her, him, them. Always the others, by the way. Start with the others. That's a good place to encounter God. You want to see God, go as far to the others as you can and watch for him because he's dwelling there. He's living there. He's waiting to be loved. He's waiting to be fed. He's waiting to be clothed. He's waiting to be understood. When we see them imprisoned, we try to help them figure out how they got there. We try to help figure out how not to have them there anymore. Jesus says, when you see them imprisoned, I'm the one imprisoned. When we see them naked, when we see them hungry, we have a different idea. But when we look to encounter God, we'll see it through the eyes of Jesus. Oh, I do not present to you that this is easy. In fact, I think this is what makes following Jesus hard. The easy part is like, accept Jesus, he'll make you righteous, you get to go to heaven when you die. How do you get there? Just believe on Jesus. You're going to die anyway. I mean, the dying part's coming. Just believe on Jesus. Jesus will do the rest. The problem is all the stuff that happens on your way to dying. All the people you encounter on the way to dying. All the people you got to love on the way to dying. All the people you got to forgive on the way to dying. All the people you got to turn the other cheek to on the way to dying. All the people you got to keep your sword sheathed when you badly want to pull your sword out. And Jesus is going, no, you live by it, you die by it. That's the hard part about following him. If he just let you do anything you wanted to on the way there, pull swords when you want, punch who you want, curse who you want, flip off who you want, cut down who you want, ignore who you want, and grace would get you home anyway. And guess what? I actually believe that. I actually do believe that grace will lead you home. But you'll leave a wake of hell on your way there. And we were saved for more than that. How do I know? Because Jesus said, if you do it to the least of these, he did it to me. I know we want encounters with God. So do I. So do I. Had a young man ask me this week. Say this to you in closing. He said, I'm really disappointed with myself. He said, I just don't believe and have peace the way I want to. Because I've been in this a long time, I should be farther along than this. And my consolation to him was, because he said, I want to be like the Apostle Paul who could get to the end of his life and say, I have fought a good fight, I've finished the course, and lay my life down for Jesus. I go, because you're looking at Paul's snapshot the day before he dies. But Paul left you a paper trail. Because earlier in his life, he said, that I may know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings. There's a Paul way back here in his life going, I don't know him like I want to. I got a feeling getting to know him is going to be some suffering. Someday I'll get there. I go, it's easy to cut yourself down when you snapshot at the end and go, look how he died in peace. And you forget that on his way there, he was praying the same prayer you are, going, God, I just want to know you more. And I got a feeling that knowing you more comes at a cost. And the cost isn't money. The cost might be loving the unlovable, forgiving the unforgivable, sheathing my sword when I want to pull it. That might be the cost. I don't know the cost, but I know it's picking up that cross and following him, and that's a part of loving his creation.